So this is something that I'm kind of creating, and I've only just started running not so long ago. I've been teaching mindfulness for a long time, and one of the things I noticed was that sometimes it's really difficult for some people, some of the time, to kind of get into that mindful state. So I wanted to just kind of start with, what is mindfulness? And I'm sure lots of you probably already know this, but just as a really simple kind of catch, I had it explained to me in this way once, and I really like it. So if you think of it as like a sort of aeroplane and you want to fly, you want to be in your mindful place, the sort of body of the aeroplane is the noticing the present moment. And that's kind of real key sort of central part to mindfulness, being in the present, being in the moment that we're in now and noticing it fully. So we're not thinking about things that have happened, and we're not thinking about the things that might happen in the future or that we need to do. Hi for anyone who's just coming in. I'm just exploring what mindfulness is. So we've got this kind of aeroplane that flies, that soars and is mindful. And that central body is noticing in the present moment, but we need our wings. So these two wings are, one of them is non-judgment. And so what tends to come in, because that's the way the human brain works, and in fact it's part of our safety mechanism, is always looking to see what's safe and what's not safe. So the human brain is always kind of going, that's good, that's not good, that's boring, that's rubbish, this is not working, or this is uncomfortable, or it's always placing a lot of judgment on the experience of that present moment that we want to find ourselves in. And so we can't necessarily just turn that off, and that's fine, but that's what we're gearing towards. When that kind of comes in, we're just going to see if we can notice that judgment and kind of go, oh, maybe I'll let that go just for a moment. The other sort of arm of this wing is to be compassionate towards ourselves. So there's this sort of feeling of how can we kind of be in the present moment. We're not judging what's happening. It's not, you know, we're not jumping into the past and into the future, but we're also kind of, we are going to do those things. And so there's that other really key part, which is, can I be compassionate towards myself? When I'm sort of jumping around all over the place. I've just noticed that I've got a message from someone who I think is trying to get in. So a couple of people that can't make it, that's as it is, but they'll get the recording. Okay, so that's mindfulness, and I'm imagining that a lot of you already know that. What I'm really keen on is, why is it so difficult for some of us to get to these mindful moments, even just briefly? Sometimes we really struggle. And the thing that I'm really keen to understand is what might be happening in some of our brains, that it isn't just a little bit of overthinking or that's a bit annoying, and it isn't just a sort of worrying about what you're doing tomorrow or what happened yesterday, but actually getting into feeling quite overwhelmed and thinking, I wasn't mindful at all. Maybe we've gone to a class or we've tried something on an app, and we might realize, actually, I wasn't really mindful at all. I wasn't there, or I was there, but I was feeling really anxious and really quite distressed, and that's actually not something that we necessarily need or want, or is healthy for us to just sit with. So one of the things I think is really useful, so if you hold your hand up in front of your face, yeah, like this, this is a really simple way to understand how the human brain works a little bit. And if you place your thumb just gently across your palm and your fingers in front of your thumb, and just have a look at your hand like that, yeah. So I'm going to say, this is your brain, okay, and really simply, the fingers, this is the frontal lobes. This is the clever part of the brain that does thinking and noticing and negotiating and reflecting and all these wonderful, clever things that humans are good at doing some of the time. So if you uncurl your fingers and you just look at this thumb now, this is the central part of the brain. This is the limbic system, and it does sensations and it holds memory, and it does all sorts, it does feelings and things like that, yeah, but it's not doing this clever stuff. It's well, it is clever stuff, isn't it, but it's a different type of clever stuff. So this is the sensations and feelings and that kind of stuff, yeah. And if you curl your thumb away, you're left with this part here. This is the brain stem. This is at the back of the brain, and this part just kind of does heart rate, it does digestion, it does really simple basic stuff. And when we're feeling kind of overwhelmed or really stressed, we start to go off offline, a bit like I think of like a bit like bars on a sort of Wi-Fi situation. We start to go offline, and sometimes we're just a little bit offline, and that's manageable. But sometimes we're kind of here or even here. And what tends to happen is that this part of the brain then kind of takes over. It's very, very simple, and it just does, we often know about fight and flight, it also does freeze. So it does fear states, it does heart fast rates and sped up digestion, and it pumps blood to the outer extremities, or it does the reverse when it feels really at risk and it doesn't pump blood to the outer extremities, it keeps it here, it gets really slow. And that's when we often sort of think, oh, I don't even remember what I was doing. This is something that a lot of people say they get into in mindfulness. They're either getting so anxious that they're like, ooh, kind of getting through the mindfulness, or they're kind of getting so kind of disconnected that they're going into that kind of floppy place where they don't necessarily really remember. Either way, if you kind of come back to that lovely plane that we want to be in, to kind of soar through a moment that we're in now, if we're going offline at all, we are unlikely to be able to be in this present moment, noticing what's going on outside of us and inside of us, and just noticing these things, even if they're little thoughts and worries and judgments pass through. But if we can't stay sort of even mainly online, we're going to struggle with that. So the sort of what I've put together here and in the other workshops that I'm running are just some sort of tips and tools for ways that we might kind of come in and out of mindful moments. So we're not going to sit still just focusing on the breath or doing body scans for like prolonged periods of time. We're actually going to be relatively active, and then maybe do a little bit of noticing and see what happens, and then we'll do something else. And the theme of this workshop is the breath. It's not the only thing that I'm going to do, but it's the theme today. So the theme last time was the eyes, and I would like to go back to something that I think is really, really important around the eyes before we kind of get into some breathing stuff. What I wanted to sort of look at was how often we're told to close our eyes or lower our eyes. When we're practicing mindfulness meditation, like I say, apps and recordings and classes, closing the eyes is a really quick way, and a lot of people see it's quite an easy way to kind of go inside. However, for many of us, closing the eyes can just feel like we become really overstimulated, and being with whatever's there can feel really overwhelming, or we just end up getting kind of really shut down. Often people talk about falling asleep. I think that's kind of a part of that sort of that place there, that freeze state, that disconnecting. So one of the sort of things that can be really useful is finding something different to do with the eyes. So before I'm going to talk about what I call touchstone positions, which is things you can do if at any point in this workshop where I'm doing something you don't like, I would 100% don't do it. I'm going to give you some suggestions for what you can do if that happens. But before we get onto that, I'd like you to just raise your arms out. One of the things about today is, your video is all off. You can only see and hear me. So you are in your own space. Whatever feels a bit odd or a bit silly, try to kind of let that go. So you're going to reach your arms out. And what I want you to do is kind of, for a moment, look away from me and the screen. And you might just lower your eyes down very slightly. So just below the screen. So you can probably still see the screen, but you're not staring at it. And what I'd like you to do is just slowly move your hands towards your face so that you can see them. You might wriggle your fingers. And then move your hands back out. And what I'd like you to do is just capture what I call peripheral vision. Well, not me, I haven't coined that term. just kind of capturing your own farthest reach of peripheral vision. So you might need to kind of move your hands in and out a little bit. You might need to just, come in and out a little bit, okay? So see how far you can hold your hands out and still see your fingers. And one of the things, if you did just glance up at the screen, that you might notice on my face is that when we're doing this, things seem to kind of slow down. My eyelids, they kind of drop slightly because I'm letting a whole field of vision in. And it might be useful to know that staring eyes, intense eyes, this is focus. And that's great, and we need to focus sometimes, but it tends to mean that we're moving towards the sympathetic side of the nervous system, if you want that language, or just, it's a slight stress state. There's nothing wrong with stress states. It's what gets us out of bed. It's what gets us doing things and rushing around. It's not really what we're looking for when we just want to sit still for a moment. So staring eyes, focus, stress state. Coming out of staring eyes into peripheral vision, this is not an animal that's looking for danger. This is an animal that's very relaxed. So sort of thinking of that animal instinct part of the brain. This is nice. This is, I'm pretty relaxed. I'm laying on the grass, staring at the clouds. I can see the whole field of vision. I'm not looking for anything in particular. So if anyone ever says, close your eyes, drop your eyes, this can be quite useful. And throughout this workshop, I sort of invite you to bring this vision in. We'll do something with that again in a moment or two. But before we kind of move into any kind of breathing or anything else, I really wanted to talk about not doing what I'm suggesting unless it feels safe. So a little bit of discomfort is okay, but a lot of discomfort, not so much. If something I'm talking about doesn't make sense, then that's on me, that's not on you. So just kind of play around with any bits that do make sense or any bits that you can engage with. I'm really inviting you not to do anything that feels like it's even going towards an edge that doesn't feel comfortable. So I'm going to stand and just show you something. If at any point we are doing something and you suddenly find yourself feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'm going to encourage you to come out of what we're doing and do something else. And so you can do anything. You can leave the room or get a glass of water or do something that you know leaves you feeling a bit relaxed and safe. But this is just a suggestion from me. So just kind of, I always stand with my feet about shoulders distance apart, so this far apart, because it makes me feel really stable on the ground. And just kind of bouncing a little bit through the knees and maybe kind of just slowing that down to a bit of a bob. And again, we can feel a bit silly if we're not used to doing these kinds of things, but just getting that bob, because what you want to feel is the weight through your feet. So anytime we're doing something in a mindfulness class or yoga or any kind of somatic work, or even just in our day-to-day life, coming into this position of feeling the weight through the feet and getting the kind of thighs and hips and bum working a little bit, this actually wakes our nervous system up a little bit, but in a very gentle way, so that perhaps we can come back to a place of rest. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is just look around the room that you're in. So you can do this right now with me. Look around the space that you're in. And you can still keep that kind of sway or bob, so you're going from your left foot to your right foot, and either out loud or in your head. Out loud is quite nice, but you can do this in your silently to yourself. I'd like you to just name some things that you see as you look around. So just naming objects, you know, the book or a picture or the window, and just let your eyes rest on it for a second or two, and then move on to another object. And what this does, this kind of looking and naming, is it brings us out of this, and we start having to use this central part of the brain, because we're taking in sensory data through our eyes, and our frontal lobes have to come online at least a bit, because we're naming things, we're using that part of the brain. So if we've started to go into this place where we feel quite overwhelmed or anxious anytime, just kind of grounding through the feet, bringing the nervous system online a little bit in a very gentle way, and just looking around and naming things. So at any time, if we're doing something that doesn't feel quite right, you stop, you notice that in yourself, and just take yourself wherever you need to. But that's one sort of tip from me that can feel useful. In yoga therapy, they call it touchstone positions, and lots of people talk about grounding and things like that. But I also feel like sometimes a lot of the language in those worlds can feel, for me anyway, sometimes feels a bit vague. And so it's just doing stuff that makes you feel a bit more comfortable. And that's it, really. So as I say, the theme for today is the breath, and I had a lovely thing said to me with someone I was doing some training with years ago, and he's a neuroscientist that works quite specifically with the breath around well-being. And he said, the breath is the remote control to the brain. And that has always stayed with me, of this sort of, wow, there's this really simple thing that we can do, that here's the body. So here we come back to this brain, here's the body. There is something really simple that we can choose to do and change and play around with that might affect what's going on up here. So it isn't all just stuff that kind of feels like it's happening to us. We're getting waves of feeling maybe disconnected or really anxious or really fearful or really overwhelmed and stressed out. There is stuff that we can just do, really simple stuff that actually affects what the brain's doing. And it might be worth knowing in this model, you kind of can't think your way out of that stuff because the thinking comes here. And that's the first stuff to go when we're stressed out, overwhelmed, distressed in any way. So just kind of knowing that for me has always felt really useful. So I'm going to do lots of different types of breathing today, but I'm really keen that, and the idea that we're all drawn to one thing over another. So there are certain types of breathing that I love and other types that I'm not so keen on. And what I'm not going to really do a great deal of is just noticing the breath. So we might sort of dip into that a little bit, but not much. So we're going to kind of see if we can alter the breath a little bit and then gently go into that, you know, that mindful moment noticing thing. So we're going to start by just doing that peripheral vision thing again. So just drop your eyes down away from the screen if that's in front of you, or however you're accessing this. Just dropping your eyes down slightly. So if you imagine straight ahead, this is your kind of horizon line of your eyes, and then just slightly down. This is a slightly more relaxed position for the muscles around the eyes. And the muscles around the eyes are all kind of supporting the optic nerve. And the optic nerve is telling the brain a lot of stuff. Like I say, staring eyes is telling the brain we're looking for things, we're focused, we might be looking for threat. And so the brain is very alert and on. So we're looking not for too alert and on, we're looking for somewhere that's a bit more kind of gentle. Yeah, so just see if you can let that whole field of vision thing kind of coming in again. And then I'd just like you to move your head a very, very small amount from left to right. And, you know, whatever you start doing, do it smaller. So, you know, if you're starting here, come in smaller. We're just turning our head from left to right, but see if you can go a little bit more slowly and see if you can keep that sort of sense of the peripheral vision. Now your eyes might seek to focus as they move across the line of the room. For me, it's, you know, there's my desk, there's all these things there. See if I can just keep, and I might need to make that movement so small that it's almost not visible. See if I can keep that peripheral vision on. And just, you know, scanning a horizon line is another way that we can ask our brain to settle down. So next time you're outside, if you've got a distant horizon line, you might play around with that and see how it feels. And the next little bit, they're moving into breath. So the peripheral vision, I'm going to say come back to that as often as you want to throughout this. The first little bit of breath that we're going to do is just a sigh. And there's a lot of research into sighing, which is, yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Such a simple thing. But the sigh and certain sorts of breathing and the yawn and things that we do quite naturally, actually, they tell our nervous system very quickly to kind of come back to a place of equilibrium. So we can do big sighs. You can join me in a big sigh, which is kind of, it's that big sigh, isn't it? It's nice, you can kind of, and then we can do a sort of more gentle sigh. And just see, you can notice just this area here in the central upper part of the chest. What happens when you sigh? Sigh is a soft out-breath, not forced. Just notice if there's any sensation through the sternum of falling down, perhaps. Might not be. And there's another breath we're going to try, and we're going to do all three in a row in a moment. If you have a dog, you might, if you listen very carefully, notice that your dog does this just before it relaxes. So it sends a real signal to the body and the nervous system. And it's a broken inhale. So we're going to interrupt our inhale in the middle and then finish it off, and then sort of sigh out. So there's still the sigh is there. So we're going to go inhale, interrupt, there's a whole little hold, and then finish the inhale and then sigh out. So it's like this. So just having a go at that in your own pace. Just inhale, inhale, release through a sigh. Inhale, inhale, release through a sigh. And the third thing we're going to do, and again, this is another little reset, is we're going to yawn. So yawning is, if you want to kind of really go for it and have a good stretch and, you know, move your hands around a little bit, please do. But we're going to simulate a yawn. Okay, so we're going to open wide. Maybe seeing me do it, as you often get that kind of moment where you see someone do it and it makes you want to yawn. So and one of the things that all of these three breathing types of breathing, these breaths have in common, is they're going to let your out breath go a little bit slower, which is a real key to kind of bringing the nervous system back sort of to a place of something a bit steady, you know, not really disconnected and too slow, and not speeding up and restricted. And on the out breath, your heart rate goes a bit slower. On the in breath, it speeds up. On the out breath, a part of your nervous system called the vagus, a nerve that runs through the nervous system called the vagus, it has a little brake, and it puts a brake on things. So when you breathe out, there's this sort of, imagine it like a handle, the handlebars, the brakes on a bike. You're not going so fast, you're slowing everything down on the out breath, and you're letting go on the in breath. So everything gets a bit faster on the in breath. So if we want things to slow down a little bit, we can let this out breath extend. So we're going to do a little round where we're going to do 2 sighs, 2 of the inhale, sigh, and 1 yawn. And we're just going to do that a couple of times. So again, in your own time, kind of breathing in and a gentle sigh. You might want to do it more loud, that's absolutely fine. Breathing in and a gentle sigh. See what happens if you explore peripheral vision with this as well. Then the interrupted breath. And again. And 1 yawn. One more round like that. And the last yawn. Enjoy your yawn if you can. It's a lovely thing. We're just going to come back again to that peripheral vision. See what happens. Raise your eyes. See if it's easier to find the peripheral vision, dropping away from the screen. You might even turn away from the screen altogether and just listen to my voice. Just listen to the instructions. So just dropping the head very slightly. So we're not dropping it right down, and we're not kind of stretching up, because these are also kind of, this is me flopping down into the freeze position in my body. And this is me coming up and forward into that fight, flight, that anxiety position. So just seeing if you can be a bit upright, whatever you're doing, whatever that means for you. If it's possible or comfortable, it might not be. Just let the chin drop slightly. Open up the peripheral vision. Just having a go at that noticing. So maybe just notice the muscles around the eyes. Notice the ears inside and the surrounds of the ears. And maybe just notice what's happening with your hands. Is there any tension in them? Are they comfortable where you've placed them? And you might notice your feet. And you can run through those quite quickly, or you can not do this at all. And just stay with that peripheral vision. So just noticing the surrounds of the eyes, the ears, inside, outside, surrounds of the ears. Notice your hands and notice your feet. And we can bring in that feeling of not judging. There's nothing wrong with what you find around your eyes or in your hands, or even if you find nothing at all and can't get a sense of your hands, your feet. So just letting go of an idea of how it feels to notice, letting go of any judgment, and just noticing kindly the surrounds of your eyes, your ears, inside and outside, your hands, palms, fingers, the thumbs, and your feet, the toes, soles of your feet. Coming back again to the peripheral vision. You can always raise your hands up like we did before with all your fingers. Just check how far can you move your hands out and to the sides and still see them. Keeping that whole field of vision awake. So it's a really gentle way to let information in through the eyes. And this time we're going to draw very small circles with the nose. And again, if we're holding peripheral vision, we're going to have to go really slow to keep that kind of vision alive. So we're just drawing a circle that you might see. For me, it's like I could be drawing a circle that's quite big, but imagine your tip of your nose has been dipped in ink and it's drawing a tiny circle on a piece of paper. Tiny, tiny circle, smaller even than you were drawing right now, smaller than that, slower than that. Bring the hands up if you want to be reminded of peripheral vision. Maybe reverse the circle. Is one way easier? Is one way bumpier? Again, no judgment, nothing wrong with it feeling strange or silly or uncomfortable. Often we can get quite bored doing slow things if we're used to being very fast. And that's also okay. Maybe just taking a moment to sigh again. And again, just noticing the surrounds of the eyes. So when we're in this place, often we might want to just close for a moment because they might feel like they've worked quite hard. Those little muscles around the eyes. And I quite enjoy just closing for a moment. Come back to peripheral vision. So we're never coming back to staring and big wide open eyes, but we might close for a moment and open back to peripheral vision. If it feels comfortable to have them closed for more than a moment, please do. And just noticing the tongue inside your mouth, and then noticing your shoulders. We're not necessarily doing anything. Something might change when you notice, but it might not. Remembering again that if something feels more uncomfortable than is safe for you, we can come back to that bobbing and standing and looking around the room and naming things. We don't have to stay in anything that doesn't feel safe to notice. And this time we're just going to, for a moment, do a couple of blowing out breaths. So we're just going to breathe in and blow out through pursed lips. So we're coming back a little bit more online. Don't have to change to staring eyes. If it doesn't feel, you can stay in that peripheral vision or even closed eyes. But just breathing in and blowing out. Your breath might not be as long as mine, and that's okay. But see, just for 2 more breaths, if you can get all of the air out as slowly as possible through this little hole, like a silent whistle. One more. Okay. So we're going to move on to another type of breathing, and for any of you that have done yoga, you might have come across this, and you might not. And you might be something that you use a lot, or it might be something that you don't know. And again, if it doesn't feel interesting and useful and sort of challenging, but only a little bit, just step away, step back to the bobbing and looking around and naming things in your space, that kind of grounding place. But I'm going to ask you, if you want to have a go at this, to take your hand again. We're going to use our hand and imagine that it is a piece of glass that you want to frost with your breath. Okay, so the same way that you might, if you have glasses or sunglasses, you might breathe on them when you want to clean them. You want them to do that. Most of us do with glasses. So we're just going to breathe in, and we're going to breathe out. It's got a sound, this breath. Have 2 or 3 goes of that. Just notice where the sound is in your throat. You can actually even feel, you can see this part of the throat, you can feel with your fingers. And you might notice if you do it with your fingers here, there is a slight constriction in there, and that's what's making the sound. We're squeezing a bit of breath out through this constriction in the throat and the vocal cords. See if you can go a little bit more slowly. And if you feel like you've got the hang of that sound, just keep going. So we're breathing in and we're breathing out. We're breathing in and we're breathing out. It is possible to do this with the mouth closed, in and out through the nose, but it can be really tricky for lots of people. So you can have a go and just see what happens, see if you can still create that little constriction, but you might not be able to, and it doesn't really matter. So you could try for that one. It's like a sleepy sort of breath. And I'd just like you to carry on with that, mouth open on the out breath, mouth closed on the out breath, whatever you like. But we're just seeing if we can slow it down a little bit. Might not be possible, and it really isn't a problem. It's just kind of noticing, can I let my breath out more slowly? Don't worry too much about the in-breath, a bit like the blowing. And your eyes can go wherever you feel comfortable. So they might look at a point slightly lower just in front of you. They might come back to that really relaxed peripheral vision. Actually, the eyelids drop quite a bit more and are pretty relaxed when you do that. They might even close. It might be that you like closed eyes. That feels okay. That feels safe and good. See if you can enjoy the sound. Some people call this ocean breathing, ocean breath. And just see if you can also, whilst keeping that breath, notice the eyes, the ears, the shoulders, maybe even the chest and the belly. Maybe. What do those places want to do? Do the eyes want to close? Do they just want to lower slightly? Do they want to hold on to peripheral vision? And what happens inside the ears when you make this sound with your breath? Can you feel anything now? And what happens around the belly? Does it move? You might not. Is there any dropping through the sternum, through the shoulders? Maybe they still feel really tense. That's okay. It's your body and it's doing what it wants to and needs to do right now. And what it's able to do right now. And that's that arm, the not judging. If we don't feel comfortable doing this exercise, we can step out, stand up, bounce on the feet, look around the room, name things. We might have our mouths open on the out breath. We might have it closed. So really noticing what your mind, brain, body is happy to do right now. And in that wing there, not judging, it's about not thinking there is an ideal or a place you're reaching for. This is just an experiment and any outcome is welcome. So there we have the compassion. We're noticing this new way of breathing, or maybe a way you've done before, but really noticing how it feels. Around the eyes, inside the ears, chest, the shoulders, the belly, maybe the hips and the legs and the feet, maybe not. And seeing if you can hold on to that breath and then start to use your arm like a sort of pendulum. So we're bending at the elbow, the arm's still very relaxed, the upper arm is still very relaxed. And we're bending at the elbow. So I'll show you if you want to glance up, or you can just listen. We're bending at the elbow, it's by the waist. And we're raising the hand on that bend, on that axis, up to near the shoulder. And we're lowering it. And this is our in-breath as we raise from the out-breath, the in-breath, we raise our arm. And we lower our arm when we breathe out. See if you can keep that noisy breath, but don't worry if you can't. So what's happening with the arm here is it's kind of becoming like a timer for your breath. And you're kind of moving your breath with your arm. And so if you want to slow your breath down a little bit, you can do that by slowing your arm down. Imagine that that's possible. And it might not be, your breath might not be able to catch up if you go too slowly. So be kind to your breath and see if you can find a way to go as slow as your breath is able to go. So we're going in as the arm bends and out as the arm releases. Just slowing that out breath down again, if it's possible. Notice your limit, not pushing, not forcing something that's not comfortable. But just seeing what happens with that. And I'd really like to invite you at this point to think about the position that you're in. So we've been doing quite a bit and looking around, and I've shown you ways of grounding if things start to feel a bit too much, and that's standing up. But I'd like you to think about how you're sitting, or whether you might like to lay down. And laying down can feel really lovely sometimes for some of us, and not so much sometimes for some of us. So I know that when I lay down, I need to have something under my head. Please don't have a big pillow that makes your head like this, because it restricts your breathing. So we don't want this. But a little bit of pillow is a good thing. Some people like to lay with something under the backs of their knees. Just want to take a moment here in a way to kind of question your comfort. So we've been doing all these things, and I hope you've been relatively comfortable, but often we're doing all these things and we don't slow down enough to think, okay, I've done all this noticing, my breathing, my eye movements, maybe looking into little bits of the body. Are you cold? Are you hot? Are you thirsty? Would you like to lay down? Is the seated position you're in really okay? Is it really okay? Is it okay for your back? Is it okay for your neck? Are you able to really enjoy, if that's possible, any of these activities, or fully be with them, noticing? So I think one of the things that we're often encouraged to do in mindfulness is to sit in a very specific position, which is often very upright, without a back support, often on the floor as well. And that really isn't for everybody. But also it really isn't for everybody all of the time. So sometimes I can sit on the floor, sometimes I can't, sometimes I have to lay down with pillows under my arms, under my legs, under my head, with loads of padding. You might want to be on a bed or a sofa. So just take a moment to really question your comfort right now and find a comfortable position. Have a sip of water if you want one. And just do anything else that might help you to feel a little bit more comfortable. We sort of move into the last section of the workshop. I'd really like you to be comfortable, to question what that means for you. And coming back into some slow breathing if we can, because you found your I hope you found your comfortable position now. And I'd like you to come back into that ocean breath if it felt useful. So if it was like, that was nice, I like that sound, and I like that rhythm that I was starting to find there. So this is the other thing of kind of knowing that we're interrupted all the time, aren't we, by thoughts, by sounds, by life. Being able to come in and out of kind of calm and relaxed states and know that we can return to them is quite useful. So we've come out for a moment, we're looking at comfort, we might have moved around a bit and had a sip of water and got a cushion, and we're going to see if we can come back. So kind of coming back into that breathing, like I say, if it felt useful. If not, just go for a longer out breath. So we're breathing in and we're breathing out, and we might breathe out through our mouth, we might breathe out through our nose. See if you can breathe in through your nose. Sometimes that's tricky. I know I have a lot of sinus problems. It's not always possible. So do what's comfortable and possible for you today. And if you're sitting or laying down, you can still start to move from the elbow. The hand can reach down to the ground if you're laying, or it can reach down to the hip if you're sitting down. And it can kind of come up as you breathe in and come down as you breathe out. And this is a way that we can start to kind of time our breathing. And I'd like to kind of have a little go, if it's useful and interesting, at a particular timed breath that some people feel is a useful one. There's so many different ones, but we're going to try breathing in for the count of 4 and breathing out for the count of 6. And it's a tricky one. So if this isn't right for you, you keep going with your arm and you keep going with a slow out breath that for you feels possible. We're not going to do this for long. So breathing in for 4, for a count of 4, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to breathe out for a count of 6. And I'm going to count that off a handful of times and see if you could then count it in your head for maybe, we'll do it for maybe a minute. We won't do it for long. Wherever you are, before we start, think about what your eyes are doing. Are they closed? Are they on peripheral vision? They don't need to stay in either of those places. They can move between the two. But seeing what lets you breathe with more ease. So sometimes that's eyes open and sometimes that's eyes closed. Maybe just test that out. Might not be possible to know. You might need to just keep moving between the two. So we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you keep going. Just a few more counted breaths like that. And then letting go of the counting. And if you're moving your arm, letting go of your arm. And again, just noticing your eyes, your eyeballs, the eyelids, the corners, inner and outer of your eyes, the whole surrounding area of your eyes. Noticing your ears inside and out, your tongue, your teeth, your shoulders, your hands, your feet. You might notice nothing. You might notice pain, discomfort. You might notice a myriad different sensations. Only noticing in a way that feels safe and comfortable. Looking around the room if at any time it doesn't. Noticing around the eyes, the ears, tongue, the throat, the shoulder blades. Noticing your right hand and your left hand. Noticing your right foot and your left foot. And then we're going to lay our hands, again, this really is, some people like it, some people don't. If it's not comfortable for you, please notice the things around your room, ground, do any of the things that we've done before that felt good, or something else that you know. But we're going to lay our hand lightly on the upper part of our chest, and we're going to lay another hand onto our cheek. This is really light, gentle touch, or firmer if you prefer firm. So some of us like light, some of us prefer firm, some of us prefer no touch. It's just finding what's okay for you. So cheek and the chest. And just breathing still, just breathing, maybe slowly on the out breath. Keeping that slow out breath if it feels useful. Noticing the sensation of either one, both of those hands, moving between the sensation. And then we're going to switch. We're going to put the other hand on the cheek and this hand on the chest. Notice the sensation. If you're seated, you can lean your face a little bit into your hand. Notice the warmth in the place where your hand is, and perhaps the coolness where the place where your hand was on the other cheek. Switch again, different cheek, different side, but with the other hand, just placing your hand somewhere on your belly that feels comfortable. And if there's somewhere that doesn't feel comfortable, please don't go there. Open the eyes, look around the room, name things. This is always available to you. Everything is a suggestion. So I can invite you to switch hands on the cheeks again and place a hand on the chest, but that's all. I invite you to slow your out breath down. Notice the sensation of warmth under your hands. Notice any sensation in the cheek that's not being touched. What's there? And then switching again. One hand on the belly, one hand on the other cheek. And really notice your pressure again. Is it comfortable? Is it kind? So if the contact does feel safe, does feel like something you can do today, notice the pressure. Especially in the hand on the cheek. If we press really hard, it might feel nice, but it might also create tension in the neck and shoulders. And we might like that tension. It might be interesting, and that's okay. Just noticing, not judging, not good or bad, not good or bad pressure. Switching again, one hand on the chest, one hand on the other cheek. Remembering to breathe, seeing if it's possible to keep a long out breath. Might be with the mouth closed, might be with the mouth open. It might even be through pursed lips because that felt easier. And then letting that go, wherever you are, really noticing your cheeks, the places where your hands were. Letting the eyes be in peripheral vision or closed. See what that does to the surrounds of the eyes. And the next time you breathe in through your nose, notice if more oxygen comes in through one nostril or the other. Or it's impossible to notice. Or they seem the same. And again, noticing the right hand and the invitation to continue and notice the left hand. Notice both hands at the same time if that's possible. Almost as if your attention is a beam of light and you can share it equally between each hand. Is there any sensation in your hands, your fingers, thumbs, palms of your hands, backs of your hands? Always knowing that you can come out of noticing into the space that you're in anytime. This is also an act of self-compassion. We do not need to force ourselves to stay in noticing. Coming in and out of noticing, perhaps placing our attention in places that feel safe. The right kneecap, the left kneecap, both kneecaps. Maybe there's nothing there, that's okay. All of the toes on your right foot, all of the toes on your left foot. All of your toes. And if you are laying down, taking the attention to the whole back of the body on the floor, Is it comfortable? Uncomfortable? Is the right side or the left side of the body heavier? And if you're sitting, taking the attention to the part of you that's resting into your seat, your thighs, your buttocks. And again, is it even? The right side, the left side. We don't need to make it even. Just noticing. Is one side heavier or more even than the other? Remember to breathe. Noticing where you are right now. Is your mind busy? Is your mind still? Is there annoyance? Is there joy? Is there relaxation? Is there agitation? Just kind of quickly going through, maybe grabbing 2 or 3 words. What's in my body? What's in my mind? And there might be a blank, and that's also welcome. And then if your eyes are closed, coming back into peripheral vision. If you're in peripheral vision, stay there with us for a moment. And then bringing the eyes, again, it's about a foot below your horizon line of your eyes, but focusing in, let them focus now. See whatever's there. For me, there's some wood on my desk. I see the grain in the wood. Notice whatever's there. Name it in your mind. And then looking from left to right, it might be the ceiling if you're laying down, just noticing. If you are laying down, very gently and slowly and kindly sit up. And wherever you are, we'll come back and just do a couple of rounds of that breath that we did at the beginning, which is the sigh. Inhale, inhale, sigh, and then a yawn. So we're going to do maybe 2 or 3 of those. We'll see what feels right for you. And again, it's always, everything here is an invitation, suggestion, just ideas to play around with. So we're going to just sigh. And then 2, inhale, inhale, exhale. And then a yawn. You might get a bit of that sound going and a stretch if you want to. A bit of movement through the shoulders if you want to. And then sigh. Inhale, inhale, exhale. And then another yawn, last yawn. A good stretch if you want one. I need to give my hands a little pull and move around a little bit. And we're coming back. And we can start to, if we want to, kind of come back into that more focused energy. I'm looking at my screen now. I'm closer. I'm here. And for the sort of practical part of the session, that's it for today.